afternoon, everyone, on the Ethical Flooring Facebook page. It's time for that live streaming of Fast Facts and Features with me, the brand ambassador, Jeanette. Welcome to anybody who's watching this on the replay as well. We appreciate you tuning in and learning from the experts that are always in the learning mode as well. So welcome, Kevin. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Isn't the sunshine really nice? Hey, it always improves my mood, makes me feel better. So,
yeah, in your home to keep it cool. And we've been talking about making sure to protect your flooring situation. It's like, okay, curtains closed here, curtain closed over here, curtain closed over here, open it over there as the sun moves. I face east to west in my little cottage, so I'm always very aware of what's going on in the sun outside.
yeah.
So we got this topic, and it's an interesting topic. And I know about a year maybe ago we talked about Pandora's box, and it's not a beautiful little piece of jewelry that you get for your wife to go on her bracelet or her charm. It's what truly you have witnessed, Kevin, in your many years of being in this industry, of arriving at job sites and customers are just aghast. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a renovation and I found this. And what are some things that people can expect when they're deciding to do, say, let's call it to a stud restoration or renovation, I should say?
Well, I guess first thing that comes to mind is, we're based out of Vancouver, obviously, and anyone who's visited or lives here knows that it rains a lot. So I'd say probably the most recent example and a really common one is the dreaded M word, which is mold. There is oftentimes mold that is hiding, behind those walls, behind baseboards, under floors, and the client may not have known that they've had a slow leak for who knows how many years until things start getting disturbed. And the most recent example, we did a project over Christmas, and it's supposed to be an easy floor install for the Christmas parties and whatnot. And when we got to removing the floor against the exterior wall, we found a whole bunch of mold. So we had to put the brakes on that. They had to do some work on the outside of their home to repair the building envelope, obviously mitigate all the mold. So that was a massive setback in time and cost for the client. But these are the kind of things that sometimes you find when you start removing things. And it's, this is unfortunately a really common one in Vancouver.
So if we even dial it back, even the cause of the mold is the next M word, is moisture. And moisture is the mitigating factor that causes mold to grow, because it's living on wood, and wood is, a nice little, let's say, what mold likes to feed on and rest on, being that it is a natural substance. So what about some moisture issues that you've come up against in some buildings and renovations?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's especially below grade, basements, right? And we're based in North Vancouver, and we do a lot of our work out here. And there's a lot of basements, and it's a very wet ground. I'm not a geologist or by any means, but my experience in doing renovations in this community is that, there's a lot of groundwater, and a lot of it wants to find its way, through the concrete slabs or through the walls and get up. Our primary concern is not getting into the flooring, but also not creating mold within the client's home, right? So moisture mitigation is a pretty common thing that we're working with. And it might not even be visible to the eye, or maybe it's not so much that it's currently caused a mold issue. But as you know, Jeanette, in the hardwood industry, especially, we have to be so careful with moisture. And it not only wrecking the floor, but it can also obviously impact the glues that we're using. You don't want what we call a glue or a bond failure, because in that point, your whole floor is becoming loose. And sometimes excessively high moisture for a consistent or a long period of time can create some real deep damage to your floor. And if you've just invested 10, 20, 30, $40,000 in that floor, perhaps an extra $500 for some moisture insurance or some moisture mitigation protection is a really wise investment.
So with that being said, what are some of the equipment that you have invested in for job sites that can give a customer a peace of mind?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is obviously a concrete moisture meter.
Okay.
We have moisture meters of all sorts, depending on what we're trying to measure, whether it's wood or concrete, whether we're measuring the moisture in the air, whether we're measuring the temperature of a surface. So, over the last 5 years, we've put out a pretty significant investment in tools and measuring devices. And the biggest one is the concrete moisture meter. And these are not cheap, but they are necessary. Because like I said, it's not always apparent that a concrete slab is elevated in moisture to a level that could potentially cause issue with your new floor, right? And if you're not checking it, that could potentially be an issue. So yeah, we have Tramex is the brand that a lot of the hardwood industry uses. But Jeanette, it's amazing how many people, how many stores, and how many contractors don't have the appropriate testing tools available. And we have them all available at the store. And if there's any concern whatsoever, then they get pulled out, and we start taking our readings and doing some extra investigation.
I know when I was a project manager for new builds, it was very much, I kept track of, I'd go in and test the moisture. And a lot of times we use a different color marker on the floor to kind of, as you're watching it. So what's this? Is it the same methodology for an existing home? My home, it's like, oh, Kevin, ethical flooring. My home is 20 years old. Oh, if I knew anything was going to happen. No, just come in and change this floor up. It's below grade. So what is either the peace of mind or what's the protocol? In my house is 20 years old. I've got nothing to worry about.
As you're saying that, I just thought of a job maybe 4 or 5 years ago where it was just a bare concrete floor, which is quite typical of some homes. This was a house in North Burnaby, and everything was fine. Everything metered fine. And we went ahead and installed some linoleum, like natural linoleum flooring. And this was in the summer, right? We got a call somewhere around September, October, after the rains had started in Vancouver. And, the house had a drainage issue around the perimeter of the home, right? So water was getting into the concrete slab. It was migrating up into the floor. And now we had a bond failure with the floor. So that homeowner had never known that this was an issue because they had bare concrete, and that bare concrete just slowly evaporated the moisture that was coming into it, and it was fine. As soon as the floor covering was put on and sealed it, now an issue exposed itself. And that can be true of other things, like, for instance, carpet. Carpet is a breathable floor covering. So perhaps you've had carpet in your basement for 20 years and never experienced an issue. Maybe it was, it smelled a little musky when I went downstairs, but, nothing ever really came of it. And, so where it's potentially one floor covering that is breathable, like carpet, could have potentially worked. When you're sealing it or you're putting down a hardwood floor, for instance, or even a vinyl floor that doesn't really have any degree of breathability, something that has been fine is now all of a sudden not going to be fine. So this is where experience comes in, and checking these subfloors to make sure that the new flooring that we're putting on is going to work with the conditions that are present in the home. So this is something, just as you grow in your career, you get better at identifying potential pain points and heading them off before they happen. And almost once a week, we're having pretty detailed discussions amongst, in the store about moisture, because like I said, we're in Vancouver. This is just the reality. Moisture is by far and away the number one cause of destroying or destruction of flooring, no matter what type it is, but especially wood flooring. So to have education about it, learning to identify, where these things might happen before they happen is massive. And it's taking, we're putting our team, especially our senior team, is putting decades and decades and decades worth of experience and putting our heads together to come up with what's the best way to make sure this doesn't happen to our clients. And let's say on the whole, we're doing a pretty good job of it.
And it's that honest, open conversation at the beginning, and prefacing it like Pandora's going to rear her ugly head. So if we were to find this, if we were to find this, if we were to find this from past experience, this is what can happen. So this is the conversation we're going to have with you. Is everybody okay with that conversation? Oh, this is good. That could happen. We could have this conversation, and having those conversations well up front. And then when it gets in and it's like, oh, everything went along tickety boo, and it's because that conversation was happening right at the beginning. And I know for a fact that I've got, I work with a real estate agent as well. And my mortgage broker friends are saying, yeah, people are thinking about staying where they are, taking that $100,000, and now it's making the basement the way they want it or the kitchen the way they want it. And I know contractors, even renovating on somebody else's renovation can be a heartache as well as a headache at the same time.
Oh yeah, so there's all sorts of good, bad, and ugly out there in the trades and contracting world, right? And we've all run into it, and we're not perfect by any means, but we strive to at least, and that's definitely not the case with a lot of what we've seen. And there's some pretty big horror stories that have come to pass of just some horrible contracting that we've come across as we remove floors, right? For that previous people have installed, and you find it's the great hider of all things. And that's why we have to have open-ended contracts to a certain extent, because we never know what we're going to find underneath there. And we're not the type of company that's just going to slap something back over top of something that's wrong and hope nobody notices, right? Like, now's the opportunity to fix it and make it right. So we have a very detailed process and contract to have all those upfront conversations as much as possible. But Jeanette, it's almost every month that goes by that something happens, or we discover something in a home, and as the team we go, I've never seen that before. When you imagine on how many years combined we've been doing this, and nobody's come across this before, it happens all the time. And so now we brainstorm and go, well, how can we mitigate and try to avoid that again in the future? But we're always dealing with hidden things, right? There's things hidden under floors, there's things hidden under drywall, there's things hidden under subfloors, and it's like, it's just make sure that who you're working with has a game plan for, if we discover these things, what's the process and how are we going to rectify it, rather than just trying to paper over it and hope for the best.
Absolutely. It's much like we're all individuals. Each house is an individual in itself.
They have
and you can have a house that was built by the same builder all the way along, and each plot of land that house sits on is very unique. So to kind of paint that big broad cloth that's not going to happen here and that's not going to happen here because everything is the same. Well, no, everything is definitely not the same.
No. So it's an interesting, never a dull moment. It's part of why I like the job, right? It's you get to see some of the you get to see interesting things and new challenges all the time, and it's as a team we thrive on it, and this is where our expertise and just kind of the ethos of the company to always towards continual improvement. There's always something to learn and to strive towards, so that's what keeps it fun.
Absolutely. And there's no better day to have when you just sit back, and I know your project managers do and yourself do, and even your installers, everybody at Ethical sits back and goes, oh, do you remember that customer? That person is going to love every morning, put their feet on the ground and starting their day. And whenever we're having a bad day, it's always good to go back and go, do you remember? That person is going to love their floor forever and ever and ever. So that's what we want.
It's like when we get our Google reviews of people who are happy, right? Like that's such a joyful time for the team, and we share it all together as a team, and those kind of things are fantastic to remember. Why you do what you do, and to keep continually every day trying to be the best, because it's awesome to have happy people.
So we're going to leave it at that. I'm sure we've got more to talk about next week. I'm going to say something today. One of your supplier reps, Alan Zeben of Mirage Vintage. It is his birthday today.
Oh, I
So we
didn't
are
know.
wishing him a happy birthday. And Kevin, I will see you later on as we both go out into community of service at Night Shift Street Ministries as we make a good, nutritious meal and provide some fellowship for our community tonight out in Surrey. So I
Looking
look
forward
forward
to
to
it.
seeing you in a couple of hours, Kevin.
You bet. We'll see you in person soon. Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Take care. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.